Alright, I'm just checking to see if we're actually live. Okay, so we are live. We're just going to kind of hang out in here for just a second here. We're doing this. We're going to do this at 7 o'clock East Coast time, and we're going to do this 7 o'clock West Coast time, and see how things go. I do want to share with everybody that will most likely be watching this a little bit later, because this channel is just so new. So let me share this, because we are going through a series with different categories and this sort of thing. We're starting with a series, Women, Labor, and Value, what women sustain, produce, and are never credited for. And with that, we have 4 books that we're going to be going through, and we're starting off with Invisible Women and the data behind that. And with that, I want to make sure, because Mad Reads is not about gatekeeping information. I want information to be available to everybody. And so part of that, let me get this open really quick, because I want to show you guys this, because it's a money saver, and gives you access to free books. And a lot of our books that we're going through are actually going to be in the service, so you might as well have access to it, because, I mean, why not, right? Shoot. Where's... okay. Almost there. And then... yep. Of course, I have this ridiculously long password. Okay, I want to show you guys this. So I have an app that I like to use. This little guy right here. That little guy is Hoopla. And when you click on Hoopla, it takes you over, and this is through your library. So your library card, when you download Hoopla from your apps, download the app, you go into Hoopla, and then you put your library card number into this, and then it gives you access to books, audiobooks, and movies. It connects you to libraries across the United States, so it gives you access to more than just your local library, and it's free. And you can see there's a couple of books down here that are actually in this series. So Invisible Women and Women's Work is in here, and both of those are free through your public library and Hoopla. So go ahead and go check that out, because that's worth knowing about. Now we're going to go ahead and start talking about Invisible Women, because I think a lot of people are, because this channel is so new, a lot of people are going to catch this later. So we're going to talk about briefly how to use this book. None of this is intended to be like homework. This is just opening up discussion, making us more aware of what's going on and why it's going on, and how we can change some of this stuff. So And there's a little bit more to it than that, but we're going to play things kind of light right now. How to use this book without turning it into work. So you don't need to remember any of the statistics in this specific book. You don't need to finish every chapter, and you don't need to explain it to anybody else. This is really about helping us get on the same page together. And so we're just going to kind of hit on some key points. We're not going to go over the entire book on this one. We are going to go through a pretty good portion of it, but we're not going to sit here and read it. We're going to hit some key points, and then I'm also going to kind of guide you through. We have a companion guide that has been put together. We also have facilitator guides if you're wanting to start your own local book club, because this is where some of this is heading. We want to do this locally, building community online and offline, so that we're connecting resources and this sort of thing. This is really intended to help all of us get on the same page so that we can facilitate things in our immediate communities and online more efficiently. And so with that being said, there are links when you go over to Substack. Everything is living on Substack right now. I do have a website, but I haven't converted that over. So all of the resource materials are living on Substack, and I'll go ahead and release the companion guide, which is really nice for everybody to see, and we'll kind of go through some of that. And then we are going to focus on, let me get, transfer this one over here. So this is Invisible Women. And I also am a proponent for don't feed corporate, because they're not interested in feeding or promoting us or our communities. So whenever possible, go directly to the source if you can, buy it directly from the author, their author's website, or buy used, buy local, that sort of thing. So with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about Invisible Women, data bias in a world designed for men. And we're going to kind of talk about the user guide just briefly here. Work is created upstream and then it disappears from accounting. And this is going to make a lot more sense as you're moving through this book. Time spent planning, monitoring, avoiding risk, smoothing logistics, none of it registers because it prevents failure instead of producing a visible output. And if you've ever worked in an office, I have worked in offices where people in leadership positions, VP, president, this sort of thing, they can't even type. Just saying, it couldn't figure themselves out of a wet paper bag, but they're being supported by everybody else underneath them that know how to do all of the work. This gets a lot more involved than that. That's just like a light example. What is counted doesn't disappear. It gets absorbed privately, and often the ladies absorb the extra work. Sometimes you'll hear people say things like, I thought I was bad at managing things. I didn't realize I was managing around things. I've had that frustration. I definitely have had that frustration. When you first start reading this book, you might start understanding or seeing why confidence coaching falls flat, boundary advice feels insufficient, resilience language feels insulting, because you're just juggling so much in a system that's not designed for how you function, but yet most of the laborious work is put on you to get it done. And And the challenge with, especially when it comes to like resilience language or can feel insulting, it's like you can't mindset your way out of a design problem. So, hey, just try harder, that does not work when you have been dumped on. So this book really kind of gets into some of that stuff. By the time you're done finishing this book or, going through it, I went through and I listened to it and I took notes on it. I think I would have preferred actually buying the book or getting a physical copy of the book so that I could make my own notes, because this does have a lot of information in it. There's a couple of other books where I would just recommend doing the reading version of it, because then you can also speed up the audio and that sort of thing. But this one has so much good information in it and just so many aha moments that is just really nice to be able to get in and really listen to the information that she has picked up. By the time you're done listening, you're going to come away from this more or less just trusting your perceptions more. Like it's all for a specific reason. You're going to be less willing to internalize friction, and we're going to get into exactly what that is. And then we're also going to become a lot more skeptical, much more skeptical of individualizing explanations. It's not your fault you're not getting everything done during the day or that you feel overwhelmed, because it's been designed that way. And then you're also going to be able to better name why something feels off and why that's not functioning well, even though you're still having to go through the process. So I'm still not really... So when we get into this and we start talking about some of this stuff, I'm going to get back in here. No, I would just do, so I'm going to go over just a couple of things that come up in this book so that just kind of gets you thinking about things. I'm not going to go through and read any direct passages from the book, but I'm going to just kind of go over some little points that came up here and there. And we're only going to do part of the book, like I said. So when we think about the society that we live in and who for the most part has been building our current society, most of the people that have the access, the money, the power, this sort of thing, the major structures of our current society here in the United States specifically, although globally this comes into play as well, but in certain areas not as much. And there's a reason why. But we're going to kind of focus on just what this is going to kind of point out. The default is really considered male, leaving out the entire other half of the population. But there's also a reason why this has come about the way that it has. And it's not necessarily intentional. It's not necessarily malicious. It's, but it is how it's been developed. And so when we think about way back when, and we start working with even the simple aspects of language and how we think of certain things and what we become accustomed to, what becomes traditional in the current culture that you're in, and understanding culture is very fluid. So just because it's a certain way in your culture doesn't mean it's that same way in another culture. And anthropologists can really get caught in this confusion where they're overlaying their perception of the world that they currently live in, and they overlay that onto deciphering how other people in a different time functioned. And when you do that, you can have a misperception of exactly what that was and how that functioned for them during that time. And we'll just kind of talk about just the general idea of, all men. Okay, so that generic use of the word man is supposed to include all mankind. But that's not really how our brains work. And so when we think of man as the generic masculine, when we talk about it's not a perceived inclusive of women in that statement, or the use of that word, or the generic use of man. I'm not sure why that's doing that. We're going to keep rolling because this should be still okay. I haven't done very many of these lives, and something just came up, so I'm just kind of curious as to what that is. But I'll figure that out later. All I know is we are currently live, and we're going to keep going. So anyway, just the use of gender in languages is important to just kind of consider. I'm going to have a local train go by, so it's going to get loud. Because we're not working in a studio. It'll be here and then it'll be gone. Life in the big city. Yay. Okay, so a couple of gender inflections that we kind of think of is when when you use the word doctor. Are you picturing a male or a female? So, and then traditionally who those have been in your most current dynamics of your social structure. So doctors way back when may have been wise women or witches. These were people that were aware of the plants, the herbs, this sort of thing, local, that they could use for healing remedies. So depending on your era and depending on where you're at on the planet, what your society is, how certain words are used and what is actually pictured when the word is used go far. And when when words are used in certain ways, it can definitely reduce the other half of the population, basically. I'm going to go into... Let's kind of talk about this a little bit. And this is city planning. And this affects really anybody, whether you're in a big city, mid-size, or a small town. This really does come into play. And when you think about travel patterns and city planning, men are the ones that actually have traditionally been in the position to be able to go through and plan out a city and how you travel through that city. And I remember growing up, and for most of my life, here's a city, and you go wandering through it, and you just kind of adapt as you go. And not a lot of thought that there was actually somebody at some point that actually sat down and continues to sit down and figure out how the buses run, where they run, how they run, making the room for them, what kind of public transportation is going to be used, where you park, how many parking spaces, when you build a new building. All of this stuff is planned out through the city and the people that sit in the boardrooms and on committees. Historically, until recently, most of that has been through men. And so men traditionally, they go to work and they come home. But that's not how women travel around the same city. And so making it easy for men to travel around a city where, cars are often in economic tightness. Generally, you're lucky if there's one car in the family. Sometimes there's two cars in the family. But the man always, or generally, is the default for the one who has access to it because they need to get to work and back. So if you're relegated to one car, and you're having to juggle that, so now maybe she needs to go take her husband to work and then take the car around. So that's added travel time for her to be able to get the stuff that she needs to get done during the day. Let's say there's two cars in the family. So he's just going to work and back. And so the freeways, the systems, that sort of thing that get him to his downtown job or to his industrial job site and then back home to suburbia is quite a bit different than the travel time that it's going to take for the woman who then, in order for her to go to work, frequently will need to drop the children off, go to work, run an errand, pick up prescriptions, go to the grocery store, pick up the kids, take them to their events, and then go home. And so women travel a lot more during their day doing miscellaneous stops than men do. And so that increased travel time going from suburbia to her possible job, to school, to these services that are often outside of suburbia, create the increased travel time for her. A lot of that is not considered. The other thing that's not considered is the majority of public transportation is actually used by women. And so when you start having to catch the bus at specific times, this is all time that is being used that she doesn't get back. And that's time away from something that could be producing income. And so that can become a problem for women in general. So if you've ever felt absolutely run down by the end of your day and all of the different places that you needed to go, all of the different things that you needed to do, that is part of the problem, is the locations to those things and your travel time to get those things done. That's all burnt time you don't get back. So, and this goes into zoning and this sort of thing. So just being able to do like mixed use, where all of those things, and hopefully a lot of us have had the experience and the differences. Like I've lived in small towns, medium towns, large towns, and I've been in communities where I can just hop over here and here and here, and I'm done with everything. Like within an hour, I can get all of my errands done. Shopping, going to the doctor's office, all of this stuff, just done. And I've lived other places where it's a half hour to get to everything that you need to do. Half hour in between each stop, and it just absolutely burns time. Let's get into... I'm gonna have the train again. It's about 4:30 my time, so it's just kind of interesting. Because again, a lot of these people that are on the trains right now are ladies that are going back and forth. getting their stuff done. And we're going to talk about the safety features and that sort of thing in public transportations, and the things that women are having to do to keep themselves safe because it's not designed for safety. So we'll kind of talk about that as well. We've always had an issue with bathrooms, right, ladies? Doesn't matter where we go, ladies never have enough bathrooms. And it's by design. It's literally by design. So, and it's a male design bias because they never talk to women about what they need in their bathroom. So basically, the standard practice in architecture is male, female bathrooms are given equal floor space. And that's a practice. So there's more urinals can fit in the same space. Women take longer with fewer stalls, children, elder, strollers, bags. Women take about 2 to 3 times longer than men in the bathroom for various reasons. 20 to 25% of childbearing age women obviously have some needs, and that takes a little bit longer. Pregnancy and the frequency, so just needing to get up more, urinary tract infections, bladder issues with the elderly, all of these things increase bathroom time. Some countries make women's restrooms paid and free for men, paid for women, which just increases the, I went over my first experience traveling over in Europe and coming face to face with needing change to access the bathroom was just about a disaster for me. So it's like, and even just recently, I went and drove through Salem, Massachusetts last year. And I'll tell you, that little town does not have public restrooms. And yeah, I was a bit miffed. As a matter of fact, I was so miffed that by the time I did find a bathroom, I swore that I would not, and I didn't. I didn't spend $1 in that town because they did not have adequate public restrooms. And the local businesses, unless you were buying something, would not let you, even in an emergency, let you use the bathroom. And so I took my pictures and I left Salem, and I didn't spend $1 there, not even for gas, thank goodness. But anywho, so that's kind of and then in some countries there's harassment in and around bathrooms, and it can also be very unsafe. Some of that doesn't pertain as much inside of the United States, but I mean, there's a reason why the gals always buddy up. If we're in public restroom areas, we definitely like other people being around because public bathrooms can be unsafe. Let's see. And then let's talk about a couple of things here. So, fear of areas is something that's really not taken into consideration in construction or the design of some of the situations that we find ourselves in a daily basis. So 62% of women are afraid to go into multi-level car parks. I won't do it. I absolutely will not do it. 60% are afraid of train platforms. 49% are afraid of bus stops. 59% are afraid of walking home from bus stops. And this impacts public access and travel. In a way, it keeps us captive. If we're afraid of going out, then we limit when we go, how we move around. So in comparison, only 31% of men versus 62% of women are afraid of multi-level car parks. 25% of men versus 60% of women are afraid of train platforms. 20% of men versus 49% of women have a fear of bus stops, and 25% versus 59% for women walking home from bus stops. And the interesting thing, too, is stats show more women experience unwanted behaviors from men, and they're not counted as a crime. It's seldom reported, but it is something that factors into whether or not, when, how, what time, where women access public transportation. So, and then when it goes underreported, it also makes the problem invisible. So nothing's done about it. There's nobody to report to. So there's an underlying issue that is affecting a large majority of our society, and yet nothing, because it's basically invisible, nothing's done about it. And if we do try to draw attention to it, it usually goes to deaf ears because the people in the committees and the boardrooms are men and they can't relate to actually what's going on. Exercise areas, gyms, parks, playgrounds, the design of it can change how the entire community reacts to it. And so large open areas are more often dominated by men, and women and children do better when things are grouped into different activities and different segmented areas. And then you see an increased participation in the same space for the entire community instead of a select few. And then, just want to check on the time here. So another segment of this book goes into the workplace. And I think we can all kind of relate to this to some degree or another. And this really starts getting into what's going on with women specifically. So Caroline Perez talks about the Long Friday, and this book in particular, in this section, she talks about there's no such thing as a woman who does not work. And there's a couple of other books in here. Women have always worked. They go unpaid, underpaid, or simply not acknowledged. And we're going to go through and really start accounting for that and how that affects society, how women's work is counted and how women's work is not counted, what types of work are counted and what types of work are not counted, and why. And the biggest part of this is the why. So the main things that women often do are the things that build community, that make life worth living. Men have, for the most part, been, and I'm going to use this word because this is what's happening, elites subjugate men to specific work things that produce something for elites. And when you think about it that way, you start understanding the extraction from the community, the devaluation of community versus I can make a buck off of this person and this is what I'm after, so this is what we count, and that's what counts in the boardrooms, this is what counts on Wall Street, this is what counts. So it's not how the damage that they do to a community, it's not how they hinder the community, it's not any of that. They don't care about any of that. They care about what is produced that they can sell and how cheap they can get a hold of it. That's the main function right there. So, so let's talk about this, because when we're talking about bottom lines, when we're talking about keeping the wheels moving, a lot of what corporations need people to do, that's men and women and children, what they need the population to do, because it's not about society and it's not about community or culture, it's about production. And so what things can they offload onto women and children that free up the segmentation of the men and forcing them into production fields. So 75% of unpaid work is done by women. 75%. Elder care typically goes to women with less support. Women's health generally suffers. And so we start getting into examples of this, because and we're going to talk about patriarchy a little bit in here. Patriarchy is damaging to society, and patriarchy is damaging to cultures and building community. And when it segments out and puts them into categories of needing to act or look a specific way, those are control features that they control, levers that they use to control a population. And we'll touch a little bit on this because it's important to understand how this starts affecting women's health and society as a whole. So women's health suffers, and we'll use this as an example, after surgery. So when a woman has surgery and she's married, she will oftentimes go home and she will start caring for other people. Instead of them caring for her, she's caring for them post-op. When a single woman goes home after surgery, she recovers faster. Other people are generally caring for her, and anybody in her life, she's not having to worry about caring for them. So her post-op is faster, and overall recovery is better. Men in the traditional sense, so in the patriarchy sense, men create an extra 7 hours of housework for women during the week. So it's another job. It's another day at work. Who needs that? And then we kind of get into a little bit, and I'm not going to overdo this. So this is 42 minutes in. I just want to be kind of mindful. We're going to have like discussions and that sort of thing when more people actually start coming in. And I am going to do this again at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So we'll kind of see if we pick anybody up. I'm doing it split like this because I just kind of want to see like when most people are coming around as we kind of move through some of this stuff. Okay, so let's get into International Labor Organization, the ILO, in like way back in the 1930s. they had determined that no one should exceed 48 hours of paid work for health reasons. Overall studies show that when men and women exceed these work hours, women's mental and physical health take a bigger hit. Does that mean that men are the stronger, more resilient? No, it does not account for the additional unpaid work she's doing at home. So these stats closed the gap. Once they updated that, the stats that they came out with during that study closed the gap. It just became non-existent. So women don't have a full or part-time wife at home. So she is the wife at home. Women frequently take positions for flexibility below their skill level and pay. I have experienced this in my life where I have taken jobs. I was way overqualified and underpaid for the work so that I could have the flexibility with the family. So I've been there, I've done that. And it is a forced choice. And overall, I didn't understand it at the time. I came from a traditional family. My parents have always been married. My mom did work outside of the home. The amount of work that my mom did over the years took a toll on her. So, and she has numerous health problems that we now know are caused from there being that patriarchal influence in those households. So she was expected to work full time and then do all of the traditional wifey duties at home too. And autoimmune disease, the whole thing, heart issues, yeah. Let's see. The other thing too is when women go off production line, for the expectation, especially as we're kind of moving along here in the current administration, the expectation that she needs to have children. This whole thing takes them out of counted production. It makes them poorer in the long term. So that time away from production work leaves them in, the majority of women will retire destitute. They will have periods in their life where they will live under the poverty line with their children. It also makes for gender pay gaps, full-time, part-time, because women are frequently pushed into part-time work. Those part-time jobs are paid less. And so they're overqualified for the position, but they're taking the position so that they have the flexibility to do care things at home. Let's see. There was a study that was done over in Germany. Where when a woman who births one child in Germany, I didn't write down a date on this. A woman who births one child in Germany can expect to earn $285,000 less by the time she's 45. $285,000 less. That's not accounting any interest that she might have had in any investments. That's just the labor part of it. So when you think about what she could have invested in if she had made that money, I mean, it's the equivalent of a retirement. Then a woman who had no children working full time. So if she had continued working full time, she would have made an additional $285,000 by the time she was 45. And retirement in most societies don't account for any of that. It's completely left out. Getting into maternity leave. Worldwide, this is a benefit to women and societal outcomes. Properly supported time and money keeps women in the workforce full time. Very beneficial for poorer women. U.S. is the only industrial country that does not have paid maternity leave because the corporates don't want to pay that. They don't see value in community or a strong cultural society. It's just profits for them. Paid time off, 7 months to 1 year paid maternity is best. No country does it. This is what the studies are showing. Full pay obviously would be best, but nobody's currently supporting that because of the financial structures that we're currently under. Large majority of women have a loss of jobs due to pregnancy. 1 in 4 mothers return to work 2 weeks after birth. That should really not be happening. Women should be spending more time for their health, for recovery, for bonding, and men should be allowed time off to help out with that process and to bond with their children. 85% of U.S. women have no paid leave. And then we've also seen recently the flexible work from home options have been reduced or removed. And most women would work from home and be really productive with that. And we know how productive that was, but it doesn't fit a certain aesthetic that certain people are trying to push on society. And we're going to get into family structure and how fluid family structures actually have been throughout time. We are living in what's predominantly been a patriarchal structure that's really been pushed on us. But there's large segments of our society that have different forms or styles of family, people working together in communion to raise children and build community with others around them. So we'll get into more of that as well. Male needs are not universal in regards to flexibility or work from home options. Homemakers are 97% women. 76% said that they would go back to work if they could work from home. 74% if the job had flexible hours. Overtime or long hours in the office are also conflated to believe it's more effective. So the more you're in the office, the more productive you're perceived to be. That's actually not the case. So overtime or long hours in the office are actually damaging. But in some aspects with it, and I've watched this, these longer hours are tagged on as it's the boys going out for a drink. going out and playing golf during lunch, and now they need to stay later for work. It rewards men more than it rewards women, because women are oftentimes not able to participate in some of those functions. I have sat and I have watched golf games during lunch breaks, and then the boys club comes back to the office, and then collectively a bunch of people are fired and let go. Those same people that couldn't go out and get chummy with the boys club out golfing. So it's an exclusionary practice. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's done on purpose, but it is done, and it does have an overall effect. And then also, when we talk about promotions go to the career track group, not the mommy track group. And then we also talk about work expenses for reimbursement. Men are able to write things off like uniforms and tools, but not emergency daycare, or not daycare at all. Not able to write off anything personal, living expenses, family expenses. You can do $30 for takeout deduction for working late because your wife wasn't there to cook dinner for you. So you can take that as a deduction. You can do $30 for drinks, and you can do that as a deduction, but not $30 for daycare because your wife is at home with the kids. Yeah. Let's see, what time is it? We have about 5 minutes left. So next week, because I think I'm going to be doing these live on Wednesdays, because I really want there to be group discussions with these. But I'm going to go through and do separate videos that talk more in depth about like specific chapters or specific topics, that sort of thing. Next week, we're going to talk about the myth of meritocracy, and we've been hearing about that in the news lately. We need to talk about what that is and how that functions, and why they're using that specific tool, where that actually comes from, and how that is wielded, because that is a patriarchy thing that they're doing, and it's not good for men or women. Most definitely not women. We are going to talk about the brilliance of biases. That's a good one. We're going to talk about the Henry Higgins effect. And then we're going to talk about work situations, how they're structured, how they're designed, how they affect women, and that goes along with how tools are made, safety equipment, a lot of that. There's a reason why things are a bit of a struggle bus, and they don't need to be. They really don't need to be. We're going to talk about how the government takes a step in all of this as well. And then we're going to talk about how the government regulates some of this, how people are taxed. We're going to talk about the gig economy, because I think there's quite a few people that are involved with that, and how that affects your overall ability to gain and control wealth as you move through your life. We're going to talk about We're going to talk about the plow hypothesis. And again, that kind of goes a little bit more into tools, how tools are designed. We're going to talk about simple things like cooking stoves and how those affect a large majority of the women around on this planet. We're going to talk about one size fits men. And we're going to talk about a sea of dudes and how products are targeted towards men, completely missing the notion that there's an entire market for women with some things, but again, underserviced, and why that those are underserviced. We're going to talk about cars, how they're designed, how they're tested, how women are affected, mutilated, and oftentimes killed because of those crash test dummies and what that actually means. We're also going to go to talk about doctors and the drugs, how the drugs are developed. I might end up needing to do probably going to have 2 more of these in Invisible Women, because there's just, this book is a great book to read. So much different information in so many different realms of how we go about our day-to-day stuff, and just understanding why we feel like we're constantly pushing a ball up the hill, because you are. So I think I'm going to leave this right here. I am setting these up so that they take about an hour. I will see some of you at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We're going to take a little bit of a break here. And thanks for joining, guys. Take care.